video as well as audio. So
Oh, we're live on
yeah,
Substack.
I would have used a laptop, but that's okay.
You can't.
You can't actually. This is all phone. We're all on phones. I think maybe you can, but it's not preferred.
Okay.
All right, so people are joining us. So stop telling me secrets, gentlemen.
No
Bob Bauer,
secrets.
Jack Goldsmith. Thanks for joining me on this
Thank you.
long week, Friday afternoon. How's your summers while we wait for the class to file in?
Mine is great.
Good. Thank you. I hope yours is good too.
It's pretty good. We are experiencing a reversal of July and August. I guess. Bob, are you in New York?
I am.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
as
I'm in
you
upstate.
have
I'm not in
experienced, we
New
were
York
like
City. I'm
100.
in the Hudson Valley.
Oh, well, that's nice and cool there. But it was 100 degrees in July, and it's like 70 degrees in August. So uh, you were two of the smartest people around on many issues, but particularly when it comes to things like executive power. And I thought we would have a sort of a high level discussion, given everything that's going on about executive power, what the limits of executive power are. You both have written, lectured, and taught, I think, generations of students on these subjects. But something happened today which relates to executive power. It's August, and maybe you haven't been following it, but the only news that I can get on my cable TV all day today is the FBI executing a search warrant on Ambassador Bolton's home and office. Have either of you followed any of that, and do you have any reaction to it?
I've seen the general news accounts. Yes. I mean, at a very skimpy level of reporting so far. I don't know how much more detail I
So
can offer than
you're
that.
gonna hold your powder. You're gonna keep your powder dry on this one until we
I
know
mean,
more.
everybody is saying that it's of a piece with the Trump administration's overt weaponization of the Justice Department and the FBI and the like. And it's possible that there's a basis for it. We just don't know that. We don't know the merits, obviously. It's of a
Yeah.
piece with the Trump administration doing to others what it thinks others did to him. So it's just the latest ratcheting up of using the tools of the Justice Department. Potentially, I mean, we don't know. It's possible. There are a lot of
We don't know.
former executive branch officials who have classified documents at home.
Yeah.
So it's possible that there's a there. But it's certainly the first order assumption is that this is the overt weaponization to go after political enemies. And the Trump people think that that's what happened to them, and they're doing it back to others. Although obviously Bolton didn't.
Yeah. So I want to explore that a little bit more generally. So I saw Trump on TV today say, I think implausibly that he knew nothing about this. He said, I think about three things of note. He didn't know anything about it. Two, but he could have known about it because he's the chief law enforcement officer of the nation, and I'm going to come back to that. And third, he said, he doesn't much care for John Bolton, and he's not a smart guy. Sort of connected, overlapping, but also disconnected from each other. That's that second point. Either of you, is that a true statement of fact and law that the President of the United States is the chief federal law enforcement officer of the country?
I believe it is true.
Yeah, I think that's correct. What strikes me, by the way, if I could respond to your earlier comment,
Yeah,
is he's put himself in a position with what he has done and even what he has said, where the assumption that this is retributive, that in the exercise of whatever discretion they had to search or not to search, they decided to search, and that the ultimate motive was retribution, he has that presumption operating against him all the time now. I mean, he's explicitly said when asked in the past that revenge may be a good thing, and he has operated in a way that suggests that he means it, and that he's weaponized, as Jack said, the government to carry out that function, to carry out that plan.
Yeah.
So he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt, and in my view, he shouldn't.
But may I just say something that I think that the Trump people think this is a feature, not a bug. I think they think that they're doing openly and honestly what happened to them under the guise of enforcing the rule of law or something like that. And I think that they think that by very openly being retributive, that they are going to water down or destroy whatever norms are left in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I have thought that these folks, Trump and other folks who work with the president, are laying a foundation for a whole new wave of, I think, promising and ultimately meritorious, vindictive, and selective prosecution motions to dismiss various indictments because of the statements that they have been making leading up to and including during prosecutions and open investigations of various figures, the latest of which may be John Bolton. So it is my view that you don't want to live in a country in which, put the law aside and the Constitution aside for a moment, if we can, that nobody wants to live in a country where the President of the United States openly directs the opening of investigations with respect to particular named, identified individuals, whether they're enemies or not. And at the same time, does not want to live in a country where the sitting President of the United States can wrap a shield, or put the pardon power aside for a moment, but can put a shield around his political allies, that there should be some independent function that takes care of those things, whether it's the Justice Department or something else. A, do you gentlemen agree with that? B, is it also your view that nothing assures the thing that I've just talked about in the lower Constitution? It's just a series of norms.
Bob, you want to go first or want me to go?
You go first. I'll come right behind you.
I mean, I think everything you said is right. Obviously, this is a terrible way to run law enforcement. It's a terrible way to run the executive branch, and it's terrible for the country. I completely agree. I think that the way we've guarded against this, setting aside a malicious prosecution defense, setting that aside for the moment, this is the way the executive branch in the Constitution, in my view, is organized. And just about every president that I know of has taken steps, and especially since Watergate, have taken robust steps to put norms in place to ensure that this doesn't happen, because every president until now has seen it in their interest to do so, and I guess in the country's interest. So I agree with what you say in terms of what's desirable. I think this is what, unfortunately, Article 2 of the Constitution permits, and that it has to be some form of, almost all of it has to be some form of self-restraint by the executive. There are a few things maybe Congress can do, but I think that's the way that the Constitution is designed, unfortunately.
We'll just add, I think that implicit in the notion is the faithful execution of the law, is the execution of the law toward the legitimate ends that Congress enacted the law for, and not for the personal and political ends of the president. So I think, yes, he has that power under the Constitution, but there is an unconstitutional theme running through his behavior here, because he's turning the government and his constitutional responsibility for the execution of the law over to his own purposes. It is true that enforcement depends on norms. It depends on the behavior of people in the government doing the right thing when asked to do things that are illegal or that are transgressive against what we expect a president to do in the faithful execution of the law or lawfully. And he's been very careful in this next administration to choose people who will not resist him, to choose people who just won't observe those norms, and when called upon to do the right thing, will find some way to rationalize not doing them or take pleasure in not doing them. I just want to add one thing about the administration operating here on the rationalization that they can do unto others what was done under Trump. I think there's no question there are people on the right who believe that he's been victimized throughout his political career, beginning with his first election, and that he's simply dishing out to others the same treatment that he got. I understand all of that. I think for many of them, it's a complete rationalization. I appreciate that they can make that argument, but I think it's self-serving. And it doesn't even approach the complexities of the situation, or frankly, in some cases, the direness of the situation that we currently face. And I just would add this. Trump's model for behavior is Roy Cohn. Trump's model for behavior is to attack people and to lie about them and to pursue them without justification because they did some harm to him and he knows no bounds in striking back at him. This goes back a long, long way. It predates the troubles that he believes he was unfairly faced with when he entered politics.
So a layperson might ask the question, how can it be that there is a principle that most sound-thinking Americans of either party would subscribe to and want to be observed, and that is not having it within the power of the president, or not wanting it to be commonplace for a president to order the prosecution, investigation, and potential imprisonment of particular individuals who are his political adversaries. And yet, neither the Constitution nor the law does anything to assure that principle is observed. And is that because it's never occurred to anyone, a layperson might ask themselves, or is that because our structure doesn't admit of it? It's just it's a loophole, if you want to use that term, that a bad faith commander-in-chief, chief law enforcement officer of the country can drive a truck through.
My view is that there are many, it's the latter, that the Constitution, as it's been interpreted, I mean, it could have been interpreted in different ways, but as it's been pretty consistently interpreted from the beginning, gives the president these enormous powers. And we're talking now about prosecutorial discretion. You mentioned the pardon power a second ago. The pardon power is an atomic bomb. The president could tomorrow, potential atomic bomb, the president could tomorrow release every federal prisoner if he wanted, and anything short of that, and effectively immunize many people in his administration from doing things. That is right there on the surface of Article 2. It's even more obvious than what we're talking about now. The president's power to interpret the law has been there from the beginning, and that gives him wide discretion about how to enforce the law. These are all things that were built into Article 2 that they've sometimes gotten a little bit out of control. They got out of control quite a lot under Nixon, but they've always kind of been held in check. And now we have an administration that has no interest in keeping them in check. It has an interest in exploiting every loophole of leverage in Article 2 to achieve its ends.
Right. So what is one to do, Bob?
Well, I have the answer, but I'm not releasing it unless I'm paid. No, let me just say one other thing, which is the presidency as it has evolved to date, as it was waiting for Donald Trump to make use of when he became president, is a fundamentally impossible institution. It is way overpowerful, and we've allowed it to be that way. It sits in our in our country as an office that extraordinarily ambitious people who want to exercise extraordinary power and ride around on helicopters and Air Force One and control nuclear weaponry, that's an office that's available. That's the one office that's available to them that permits them to do it. The moment they're elected, their birthplaces become historic monuments. When they leave office, they build mausoleums in the name of libraries and memorials of one kind or another to their presidency. And we, as a culture, have come to see the presidency as a kind of just opportunities for extraordinary people, great people, to do great things for which enormous power is necessarily available. And we've put ourselves in danger by allowing that to develop as a fundamental expectation of the institution.
So here's another sort of general category of loophole. Mm-hmm. Some of it's in the Constitution, if you talk about habeas corpus. But there are lots of statutes that more lay people have become familiar with in the last number of months that relate to some emergency power, whether it has to do with immigration, or it has to do with deportation policy, or it has to do with taking away home rule from D.C., or it's not called an emergency, it's called something relating to a predatory incursion. And the president has power in many of those instances to do things that ordinarily he or she wouldn't be able to do. I didn't have a chance to read it, but right before I logged in to this conversation, the New York Times has a story up that the title is something like 10 emergency powers that this president has used, arguably when there have not been emergencies. Why do we have all those things? And do we need to rethink those or not?
Bob?
Jack is a world-class expert on this, so I'll let him go first.
Bob and I have been on a rant about this for 6-7 years now. We have emergency powers because in modern times, given a dangerous world and over time, the Congress has delegated statutory powers to the president to act in a so-called emergency. The criterion of emergency is not what we normally think of as an emergency. It is basically what the president says is an emergency. Trump is not by a mile the first president to claim an emergency when there's not one that meets the classic definition. There are 140 or so, depending on how you count, of these emergency statutes, and some of them, there are dozens and dozens of others that don't even use the word emergency that do similar things. These are powers that the Congress gave away to the president under the assumption that they were necessary and would be exercised reasonably
in good faith.
And there are the U.S. Code is littered with powers to the president that the president could take literally and run with. I mean, this is not unlike the tariff matter. I mean, just for a second, that's an emergency statute. AIPA. It's the most important emergency statute that the president has. It's a hugely important foreign policy tool. It's actually a close case in my judgment. It's a really hard legal issue whether Trump's tariffs are lawful or not, because there's a literal reading of that emergency statute that allows him to regulate the importation of goods in a quote unquote emergency, which the court is probably going to defer to in terms of it being triggered. So this is of a piece of, this is a broad problem that has been building for a long time, and the Congress and the people have failed to fix it.
Well, you've been talking about it for 6 or 7 years, and you have not fixed it, gentlemen. So I lay some of the blame.
We take full responsibility. We try.
You raise an important point. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No,
you raised an important point. You asked, what do we do about it? I mean, Jack and I wrote a book in which we laid out a whole slew of reforms by particular topic area. It certainly needs to be updated.
This is after the first Trump presidency.
After the first Trump presidency, published in 2020. And there's just a whole range of reforms, including ones that didn't occur to us or that we didn't include wrongly or rightly, that could address in the area of the pardon power, the relationship between the president and the Department of Justice, and in particular, the application of criminal statutes to corrupt behavior by the president. A whole range of reforms that could have been considered over the years, before and after Trump, but particularly after the first Trump administration, and didn't happen. Unlike, for example, the wave of reforms that were enacted after the Watergate episode in the Nixon period. And that's going to turn out to be, even though reform movements move slowly in the United States, a grave mistake. Grave mistake. Because it's going to be much harder now.
Yeah.
It's going to be much harder now.
Yeah, well, certainly not the next 3 years. So one area of possible mitigation is to have some involvement written into the authorities and the statutes. And some statutes admit of this. The parties argue. So you have to have an emergency or some kind of set of circumstances that qualifies an emergency. And statutes could make clear that you can't just do that by fiat. And if you're not acting in good faith, a judge will interpret the statute in a way that defines what is or is not an emergency. Is that viable? Is that doable? Doesn't that already exist in some statutes? Should it exist in all the statutes?
I think it's hard. I mean, if you look at the cases construing the Insurrection Act, which is one of these statutes that authorizes the use of the military in the domestic sphere, the judicial decisions have basically said it's the emergency call is the president's call. There's one decision that says if it's really, really obviously in bad faith and the president is saying there's an emergency when no rational human being could say that there was one, we might not defer to it. There's one opinion that suggests that. That's going to be a very high bar. And Congress could write something into a statute that was more fine-grained, but it turns out to be very hard to do. This is the paradox or difficulty of emergencies, is that it's difficult in advance to specify the necessary and sufficient conditions with enough specificity enough to control the president.
Yeah, it's trust. It's trust that the executive will act in good faith.
I just can't emphasize enough. And I've been studying the presidency for almost 4 decades now. And the trust point and the responsible point and the oath to the Constitution and having checks and balances in the breast of the president and taking it seriously, these have turned out are absolutely vital to the proper functioning of the executive branch. Absolutely more important than the laws, because the laws allow so much discretion.
If I could add one more thing to that, I agree. And what we've seen in the last 4 years is that if other major institutions in the United States are not prepared to take a stand and make the right choices under this kind of pressure, then the democratic culture as a whole will be so corrupted that successful defense will be impossible. People complain about the Supreme Court. I sometimes complain about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did not direct CBS or Paramount to pay $16 million to settle a baseless claim with the president when he's trying to intimidate the media. The Supreme Court did not require Paul Weiss and other law firms to settle totally unconstitutional attempts to intimidate them into dropping the representation of clients hostile to the administration or taking up clients that the administration wants them to represent. The Supreme Court didn't order Jeff Bezos to basically destroy the Washington Post, or at least attempt to destroy the Washington Post, certainly begin to undermine the Washington Post as a major journalistic force in the United States. And so if we have, a culture in which democratic values are going to be traded off by major institutions and major leadership outside the political sector, this is going to be very difficult to defend against.
So what is clear on this Friday afternoon for all the people who are for 25 minutes playing hooky from work, need to go back to work, that we have you fine gentlemen have tried to pack into 22 minutes an entire seminar of thinking about executive power. We need a lot more of this. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your service. And now get back to work, you two especially. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Preet.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.